Welcome to the Deer Society podcast. Here's your host, Brian Lemke.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Deer Society podcast. 2023 is here. Happy New Year. First podcast of the new year. I'm Brian Lemke, joined by Mike and JJ Dukart. Lots of exciting stuff coming for this year. This podcast, we're going to be talking about how the season wrapped up last year. We're also going to be talking about ATA this year. Some new exciting things coming for the Deer Society and just the industry as a whole. As you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, we got some bone here on the table. We're going to be doing more of this kind of stuff. So more show and tell, more visual, more cool things to see. So if you guys are watching on YouTube, you'll want to check that out for sure. Lots of great stuff coming. We're also going to do a giveaway in this podcast and going to do that more and more. So provide a little more value for you guys listening, give you some cool chances to win some cool stuff. But guys, lots to unpack. Crazy end of the year, crazy start to the new year. So where do you want to start?
Yeah, it's hard to remember everything, so maybe we'll just have to go in order, kind of jump back to before the holidays, kind of wrapping up the season, looking at a buck we call Payton here, sitting on the table, 6.5-year-old buck. Story with him and how the season ended, and then what happened there. So,
yeah, well, he looks at me because I guess Payton was kind of my number one target, and I put a lot of time and effort into trying to get him this year. Not that it was just me, it was all three of us, but it just seemed like that I was given the opportunity whenever the windows came that, hey, Dad, you go sit here type of a deal. So Payton, yeah, he was a 6.5-year-old buck and a buck that we had seen for a long time. And he would only show up late in the season typically. And so we had another buck that we call Curly Fry that had been around for quite a long time. He's 5.5 years old. And he's a regular. I mean, he just pretty much lived on the property. So these were kind of the two that we wanted. And the reason we wanted to get him out was, one, because of age structure, 5.5, 6-year-old, 6.5-year-old. That's kind of our target, that and above, obviously. But it kind of depends on their genetics. So if they don't have that 180 to 200 genetics, then we want to try and get them out at 5.5, maybe 6.5. And so that's kind of where the case was here. Anyway, long story.
All deer we want to get out at 5 and 6.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. All deer. But they become more, for me, I should say. For me, they become more, if I have a 6.5 out there, that's like 180, and I have a 5.5 out there, that's like 135 or 140, I would prefer to kill the other one, the smaller one, just because I know that 180 could turn into something bigger, or I've just been at this for so long, I got the dad mentality. I'd rather see Chris shoot it, or I'd rather see JJ shoot it. You know what I mean? Because it's not about me. It's not about, holding big deer, but that's my mentality there. So with that being said, we had this deer patterned, Payton, and he just had our number. I mean, every time we would go sit a stand where we knew he was visiting, when we had him patterned in daylight, which was very, very rare, by the way. And so when he hit that daylight window, we had the wind right for that particular stand, he'd show up at another stand. And this went on all season long. I mean, it was a chess match. And we had some really close encounters with him and with Curly Fry. Jay, why don't you talk about one of the encounters you had with the two of them?
Yeah, and I was just going to backtrack a little bit when you were done there. But so this buck, Payton, Chris found his first shed off this deer when he was 3, the one side. And I think, Brian, you were even filming him that day it was one of the early Whitetails from Scratch episodes. And then, I'm trying to think, 4 years old, he kind of disappeared. 5 years old, Chris almost shot him that year.
That's right. I
didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
Hey, I had a big wide 8-pointer. Who was it? I'm like, I don't know. And then he showed up on camera the next day, so it ended up being Payton. Then we hunted him pretty heavily last year, but me and you tagged out, skyscraper, little splitter, and then Chris was kind of up to bat on Payton and didn't quite get the job done. So then 6-year-old came back, and he kind of took over this year at 6 and really started to push the other deer around and became the more dominant deer. Took over the property. Our bucks from last year were gone. Curly Fry tried to step in, and me and Chris were hunting one day, and curly fry hit one of the cell cams, and went into the property. He hadn't been around that much this summer at all and into the fall. Just a couple of pictures, and then we saw curly fry kind of walk into the valley, and then, this whole valley is wide open. Like you can see, we've talked about it before. The habitat's just way too open, too mature. Payton came off the hill where he was bedded, and we can see him a couple 100 yards away. He comes down into the valley and meets curly fry and just absolutely smashes him. You just hear him crush curly fry. And
it was just like one slam.
Yeah, one slam.
And that we didn't see him the rest of the year.
And curly fry, disappeared then the rest of the hunting season. So Payton took over and just absolutely ran every other deer out of the area, besides, the 3-year-olds, 2-year-olds, and other deer. So that's kind of a summary on him. And then, toward the end of the season, he started daylighting a lot. Had our number. He played the wind quite a bit, so we were always trying to,
Well, I'll step in now because it was toward the end of the season. And, you go through the holidays, it starts to get cold and the seasons are over. And I'm not going to say you quit hunting, but I think maybe our, urge to get out there real hard is less because it is colder. It's a tougher sit. You're a little bit burned out, and the families are here. You got the holidays. There's a lot going on. And that's kind of what happened here. So it's kind of that last week in the season here, which we go to the end of December. And he daylighted 2 days in a row.
The 28th, 29th, and 30th.
Right, the 28th, 29th, and 30th. And the two stands that, we've been playing chess match at. So played the wind. At that one day, me and Chris went out, and I thought for sure we were going to get him that day for sure. It just, everything lined up. All the elements were there. We had the moon. We had, everything was perfect. They were showing up in this field early. They needed food. And there must have been I think it was 36 deer showed up in the field that day and 56 turkeys. How he didn't show up, I just don't know. But he didn't. And he actually showed up at the other stand. So later in the week, he shows up at the other stand 2 days straight in the daylight. Now, the north wind is that one stand where he showed up there. And then the other one where we had all the animal, the deer and the turkeys that's a south wind stand. And so anyway, I thought, you know what? We're getting to the end of the year. He keeps beating me. I'm going to give him the wind. You know what I mean? I'm going to give him the wind. And what I did is I phased down and I took one of them little portable ozone things, and because I was in the bat blind, and I hit that, and I thought I'm going to give him the wind because that's how I shot Little Splitter the year before. I gave him the wind, but you don't want to do that early. If you do that early and you blow it, a deer like that, he's going to make you. Then you're done. I don't think people really understand how picky and how sensitive. That's the word I'm looking for. How sensitive we are to hunting our stands and when we hunt them. We are extremely careful not to blow deer out. And that allows us to keep the deer on the property, but it also allows us to hunt these stands over and over and over. And back in the day, we could never do that. You know what I mean? You would hunt a stand 1 or 2 or 3 days and you get burnt. You'd burn the stand. And then you could tell because no deer would show up. But anyway, long story short, end of the year, I'm going to give him last day. I'm going to give him the wind, get phased out, get crazy, get in there early, and I just wait. And all of a sudden the does start coming. And they're about 50, 60 yards out coming to this little transition area. And all of a sudden they lift their heads up and they'd be like, what's that? What's that? And I'm like, you know what? I think they're smelling that ozone machine. So I shut it off. And then later on in the sit, they would come in, they were right into the plot. In fact, at the end of that sit, I had them right outside the window of the bat blind, 10 yards away. They had no idea anybody was in that blind. So I did my job on that scent control. Problem is, right as we get to magic hour, all of a sudden the deer start blowing out of the valley. I'm like, what in the world is going on? Did the neighbor's dog get loose? Is somebody trespassing? What's going on? And it wasn't about 5 minutes later, here come this big old blonde coyote just pushing them. Not chasing them, but pushing them. And so what them coyotes do is they'll push them deer when it's cold and that heavy snow, and the weak ones can't withstand it within a few days. They keep pushing them. They just croak over dead. You know what I mean? And anyway, this story is getting longer now, but so that day, the deer got blown out of the valley. Payton didn't show up. It's the last day. We get home. JJ goes, he showed up at the other stand where I had the good wind, and he walked by in daylight. So it's just like, you know what? I wasn't upset. I wasn't mad. I wasn't frustrated. It was the last day of the year. It's like, you know what? You deserve to live, deer. Payton, you deserve it. You whooped us all year long. You're a smart deer. You're an old deer, and kudos to you. So that's the story of Payton. Now, why is he sitting on the table? I'm going to hand it off to JJ on that one.
Because I shot. No, I'm just kidding. We have been trying to log the property for 3-4 years and had trouble getting loggers to actually commit. So this year we finally said, we got friends here that are big-time deer hunters actually, also log for their job and build pole sheds and stuff, built a pole shed for us. But locked him in early. I kept texting him, season closes December 31st. Can we start logging right away? Because I didn't want to miss out on a whole nother season of habitat building and all the good things that come into logging. So locked in early January. We actually walked the property. What day was that? 7th?
Yeah.
By the time
like
you finally got up
before
here.
we went to ATA show.
Before ATA. It was the really, really cold day, and the forecast that morning, we woke up and we were going to walk with him at 8 in the morning. It said it was 2 below real temp. It was kind of like, oh man, this brings us back to that whitetails from scratch. One of the first episodes when it was like 20 below or something, and we all just were dying out there. But figured, well, we only get one shot. Let's walk it. So we're walking with Scott Baker. He's the one doing our logging, and about an hour in, we're walking up there by IMX where we typically saw Payton. Mm-hmm. Hitting the standing beans and stuff, and just looked over 15 yards from our stand, and he's laying there all stiff and frozen, and no snow on him. It had just snowed the day before, and just tracks walking right into the bed, and there he was just laying there. So I threw out a handful of choice words. Was pretty upset, and
texted me. I was all
texted him right away because he was spray painting trees with a different guy marking trees, and I was with Scott marking trees. And Scott's a pretty big deer hunter too, so he knows 6 years, and he knew how bummed we were. 6.5-year-old buck, seeing the mass and just seeing him dead there, and he thought that maybe he's like, man, it looks like coyotes just ran him in here and he died, or we didn't really know.
That's what he said. And then when
no
I saw
blood,
that,
no wound, no injury,
nothing.
Really, really lean. There's no fat on him at all, but big deer. Looked fairly healthy from the outside.
Healthy, but he looked like a rundown rut deer. He didn't have that neck and body, but his body was long.
Yeah, 6.5 years. He's a big deer.
A big buck.
Big deer. Eyes were not frozen that morning when me and Scott found him, but when we came back later and did the video, which we posted online, then the eyes were actually frozen by the time we got back to him. So I don't know if he just died like hours before we got there, or if it was 8 hours or 12 hours. It
must have been, because it had to be that night for sure, like early morning hours. It'd be my guess, because it got down cold.
Real temp.
Yeah, real temp. What'd you say, 15 below?
Yeah, 10 to 15 below.
And then when Scott said that about the coyote, well, he didn't even know I saw that one big blonde out there pushing deer around. And so did he run himself down that badly? And right away my brain starts going, and I'm thinking to myself, if this deer can see another buck come in at, 150, 200 yards away, because that timber's too mature. And that's a habitat issue. And we'll tie this all together, but between that and all the neighbors' does were on there, all the does that were there, like I'm seeing 30 does, and he's still running, and he's running that hard, not letting any other buck breed. I think he ran himself to death. Then you get this deep snow, and it was deep, so it's hard to walk through that snow, and then you get that cold snap. And it's not that there wasn't food there, because there was plenty of food there. So he just wasn't eating. And then now I hear rumor that on one of the TV shows here on Bally Sports, they were talking about Minnesota deer And they said that we had a lot of fog in this. You can get that fog in the real cold snaps. So it'll warm up and you'll get that fog, and then you get that crystally kind of deal. I've seen it in North Dakota quite a bit too. But it's when it's really calm and that moisture in the air, then that freezes and they're breathing that, and then it's penetrating their hides. And if they don't have the fat layer like him, they said it's killing a lot of deer this year in Minnesota. So I think it's going to be a combination of the habitat not right for him because he's chasing too many does. Okay, it's too thick, or it's not thick enough. I'm sorry. The weather, the cold snap, just the behavior, and basically he ran himself to death. And I want to bring something up because we do a lot of videos and a lot of posting, and so we run into Payton. We're going to do a recovery. We call the DNR. We get the tag. We do everything by the book, by the way.
Yeah,
we do not mess around with anything. So. He's just got the mass, don't he, Brian? Brian's taking a good look at him here.
Beams and mass are the two.
Stud of a deer. Yeah.
And the frame too. I mean, that's what kind of caught me. Is like, he does have a nice big frame on him.
Big frame, huge bases, lots of mass.
Yeah.
It's a gorgeous buck.
So we want to show this guy off. So what do? We brush him off with the glove, because there was frost on him a little bit. It wasn't snowed on, but there was a little frost on him. So we wipe down his fur nice and then pick up his head. And of course, he's stiff as a board. And so I'm cranking the neck and I'm turning it and I'm breaking it loose, basically, is what I'm doing, so we can give everybody a good look at the deer. And the ears were like spikes. You can see it in the video. But one of the funniest things is people picked up on it. And I didn't even think about it when we were doing the video. But people picked up. We said, yeah, he froze the day before, all that. And everybody's like, that deer, there's no way, because he's so loose, he wouldn't lose. And they didn't realize what we had done. But that's social media for you. So now we're out there, I'm posting, explaining it, time after time. But that video did go viral.
Yeah, it went video just as we went to ATA. And that's why I was joking a little bit earlier, because we get so much flack from people that don't quite get the backstory on why we clean up a deer and loosen them up.
But it's understandable. I mean, if I'm watching that video for the first time ever and they said, it just got, froze overnight, froze to death, then I'm seeing a guy like move it around the neck, I'd think the same thing. We didn't think about it before we did the video and we didn't say anything about it.
Yeah. And then social media just gets out of control when 500,000 views and too many comments to really, respond to, and is what it is. So that's fine. But kind of a follow up to that. The 5-year-old buck curly fry died before this deer during that cold snap. The neighbor found him under this 1.5 foot of snow we have. So,
and we didn't find that out until we got back from ATA. So we knew we lost Payton, and then we thought, well, curly fry's going to die next year. Then he's the guy. He'll take back over. Get back from ATA. JJ's like, neighbor just found curly fry under the snow, dead. I'm just like, no. And both deer, not a speck of fat on them. And there was a lot of food there.
But they were running so hard this fall, rutting real hard. And now what we're seeing too with our other bucks, I mean, this is a shed I found yesterday, just driving around on the skid steer doing some stuff, getting ready for the loggers. Deer are shedding early. I mean, in the past 24 hours, 3 different half racks on camera. So, I mean, it's a super early year for that. And we have 2 feet of snow. I mean, drifts up to 3 feet, ice covering a lot of the food. So it's just been a rough winter so far.
Yeah, I think it's crazy to look at that. A lot of our bucks too have shed already. And, it's crazy. You think, well, we're going to leave them all this food and to get them through the winter. And that's great. But there's so many other variables that go into that. I mean, the winters that these deer go through are harsh. It's hard on them. And, this is the sad reality of that. So many times we think, what happened to that deer? What happened to that deer? And they just don't show up, and maybe they moved or maybe they did something different. This is proof of that hard reality that happens sometimes. I mean, we got blasted this year with not only snow, but that extreme cold and,
early. And it was a late rut too, by the way. I've been kind of doing some reading and stuff on different posts and different sites about, rut. And there's studies that they're actually going to be going through showing, when they shoot does on certain properties, and then they have these, they'll pull the fetus and they can tell when the, gestation period was and that kind of thing. And so they're seeing, that's proof, these deer are being bred at different times, and there is a shift in the rut. So they're proving that. The rut does shift. It's not the same week or the same day or peaking out at the same time every single year. And there's talk that it's weather related but this particular year, I noticed that the rut did seem to, the behavior showed up later, and it was warm early. So think about it like this. The bucks are still going to rut up, and they're still going to get revved up, and they're still going to, but if the does don't come into estrus, it gets pushed back a week or 2 weeks. In Minnesota, now they're running a week or 2 weeks later, but yet they've already started their behavior hormone, things going on. Now it's just a longer rut. And now if you get a bad cold snap with heavy snow later on and they're still running hard because the does are still in estrus, that was just kind of the perfect storm. I think that's what happened this year.
Yeah, a lot of bad luck there. That's like a gut punch, finding Payton and then the neighbor finding Curly Fry. That's part of it though. That's something that you deal with, and it'll be interesting to see what happens now next year. And you guys are obviously making some improvements again this year to try to combat that or help that some. So maybe we kind of transition now into the logging effort and what that looks like, and what the kind of strategy was behind that, and how you think that may have helped in this type of situation.
Yeah, so we're just diving into the logging. We're probably 60% done now based on the number of trees that they've cut down. But yeah, you can just tell, like, we walked marking more trees the other day after they did their first run of logging there. And the deer were in these treetops and making trails through the woods like you've never seen before, like unfresh snow from 12, 24 hours before. Looked like it'd been weeks of deer traffic in their beds, and, poop and tracks and pee and all kinds of stuff in there. So they're definitely taking into these areas where all the tops are falling down. All the buds are now accessible. Obviously, they didn't have enough food this fall, so they're in there eating good now, but we're spooking them. So we're putting a lot of pressure on them too, bumping them out of the area, putting stress on them. They're running around. So hopefully it kind of counters this year to where the food outweighs the stress we're putting on them with the logging operation.
And the snow depth and cold.
Yeah. What that's going to do next year, and you can already see it in the woods. You look up and there's just wide open sky in some of these areas, some of these tops where we're cutting these big oak trees out and big walnuts. Big trees with huge canopies, probably 225 trees or, 200 to 250 trees. I'm not sure what the final will be, but a lot of sun will be accessible now in the woods, down on the ground for new plants and smaller trees and shrubs and stump sprouts and all kinds of stuff. To start growing next spring, next fall, to give more habitat, more security, more food. So if we do get another hard winter like this, then, hopefully the deer can survive and they can browse a little bit more in their beds and not have to run from a coyote and run 200-300 yards and just stay and go 50 or 40, circle back and stay in their bed. So yeah, just trying to give them better habitat. More food is probably one of the top things out of the logging operation that we're looking forward to. And then, late season. Those, like, you'll notice where we did all the hinge cutting with Andy 4 years ago, that if you do blow up an area or you do some projects in there, you're cutting trees, you're opening a plot, like the deer are really close by and they just circle around and they come right back to that spot, within 30 minutes, half hour. I was cutting the other day doing just some edge feathering, which is another habitat thing we're doing out there, is just dropping more trees and getting more sunlight to the ag fields. I had 3 deer that wouldn't leave my sight and 30 turkeys, like, just right next to me calling for 3 hours. Like, they wouldn't leave because they knew that when I left, there was food instantly available to them.
And literally 30 minutes after he left, in that food plot we call banana.
And corn plot.
I counted 22, but I bet
I think it was more 30 or 40 deer were in there within an hour after I left. So they didn't go far.
Less than an hour, actually.
And that just doesn't happen in the wide open, what we call oak roost to walnut bottoms like if you blow that valley up, like they leave the whole valley and just go to the neighbors or go somewhere else. So trying to prevent that, thicken it up, and then we'll have Andy come in AWS and do some more hinging and a little clear cut pockets and try to optimize it for even more food and cover and habitat and hunting strategy too. So
trail systems in there. So I'll add a little bit to the whole timber thing. People, JJ, you know, like we'll take 250 trees out of there, and you know, people think, oh, well, yeah, you just go in there and you just clear cut it and blah, blah, blah. That's not it at all. I mean, we're talking about probably 50 acres of timber, and we're taking 200 trees.
70 acres of hardwoods.
70 acres of hardwoods, and we're taking 200 trees. So that's what, 3 per acre? If my math is right, I don't know. I got an old brain here, but that's not very many trees. But we're talking about taking these big, massive oak trees, and people are like, oh, you're killing these big oak trees. Well, no. We select them based off of, you know, is there a nice white oak by here? Is there one that will take over when we open that canopy? So we may have a big, huge bur oak or something like that. That's going to be a great food source and a great roost. We don't want that one to go if there's nothing really good around it. And we prefer the white. We'll take less of them over the reds, but there's a lot of reds and blacks there, and they just get really super tall, big, you know, great timber trees. I mean, and then we have a grove of walnuts, thanks to the family that owned it before. He was kind of big into the whole timber and forestry, and he planted a lot of walnuts, and he did it right. You know, they planted them with pine trees. He knew what he was doing. And so there's not very many of them that are really mature for harvest, but because there's so much volunteer in there now, we need to kind of open some of that up. And so there's some that are, you know, right on that front end of the good, you know, timber quality that they're looking for. So we took 40 of those, but left at least 100, 150 of them, you know,
or more,
or more.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we know what we're doing. And then the timber guys that are coming, he's a deer hunter. He's a big deer hunter. And so he's getting as much excitement out of this, watching what we're doing and helping us with our timber, because it's about deer. It's not just about timber. But then when you see that great timber resource come out and go to market from a business perspective, that kind of gets me excited too.
You know, it's cool being out there the other day and kind of watching it. You know, it's more of a strategic logging operation. And, you know, I think somebody that's not experienced it before, you know, logging, you think of, okay, some logging company just comes in and they start whacking trees, and they're going to take whatever is best to make the most money and the most efficient and to work all around. Well, it's interesting the way that you guys have done it. I mean, you guys are there, and you guys are the ones that are going through and marking these trees and looking at every aspect. You're looking at it not just from the logging standpoint and the money standpoint, but you have a small logging operation in there that it's for hunting too. The logging's being done by hunters, and there's this hunting strategy to it too. It's like, okay, you're not taking every single oak tree either. I know that there's great oak trees out there that, yeah, that'd be a great tree for a logger or to cut down for a logging purpose. But no, we're going to leave that one because we know turkeys roost there. So there's so much more that goes into that. And we're going to do a Whitetails from Scratch episode coming up here on this logging operation. And it'll be really cool to see that and break down that strategy, because it's more than just a logging effort. There's so much strategy that goes into, just like everything that you guys do, so much strategy that goes into this logging operation. It's a strategic logging operation, not just for the land and to benefit from a cost perspective, but for future land, future animals, life, growth, all of the above.
Yeah, and even as Scott's working, you know, making new trails out there, he cut one through a fence gap, or it wasn't a fence gap, it was a solid fence line, and he put it through. And I remember his comment when he was talking to us, was like, "Oh, I didn't want to put it, you know, over here because I didn't want the deer walking, you know, on the backside of your blind, so I cut the fence over here." Yeah. So, you know, he's looking at it like, okay, if they're hunting here at this blind, I'm going to try to not mess up this spot, trying to get in. So it's just nice to have that, hunting background. He's killed a lot of big deer and understands deer as well as we do. So yeah, he's not looking at it for, he knows the value part too, but yeah, he's looking at it from the hunting perspective. So pretty cool.
Yeah, I want to make one comment before we kind of move past this too about Payton and the video and some of the haters out there. I think that, it's easy to look at on social media and question, somebody's video or question something. And I really think it's important to touch on it because, what you guys did is because you're so passionate about, the deer and what it stands for and what it's about, limbering him up and being able to show him off in a certain manner. And now, having him here and going through the work of taking advantage of, that sour situation, it's about doing the deer justice. You guys put in so much time and so much effort into, watching these deer and creating great habitat for them. And then the chase, I don't think people understand that there's a reason why you show them off the way that you do and do some of those little things. It's an appreciation factor. That deer deserves, to be showed off in a certain way, and taking the time to do that, I think is really cool and important. And, I look at it from that side rather than the side of, oh, well, they probably did something wrong, So I think that, people don't necessarily take the time to think about those type of things when they're sitting behind their keyboard and commenting,
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, if you just think about it from our standpoint, what's more value to us? A little 60-second cell phone video behind a deer that died in the off season, or a 7-year-old buck that we could have, built a gigantic story around with all the years of history and trying to, shoot him on like. It's just not even close. Why would we?
Yeah, and the experience, the chess match we had with him this year made even that much more value.
If anything, we lost an opportunity at a much more valuable, story and season and hunting next year by finding him. So,
but I've always said it. It's always
what it is.
I've always said this. It's about the deer. It's not about us. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just the way we approach it, and we just want people to have success and show them and teach them. And, I guess it turns into entertainment, but it's really not about us at all.
Couple things too here. The shed that I found is Skyscraper Jr. He's like the identical 2-year-old shed to what Skyscraper was when he was 2. We got a 3-year-old shed mounted up on a Mountain Mike's Skullmaster up on the wall. And we have some pictures from when Skyscraper was 2, and it's like 95% identical to this shed. So we got a miniature Skyscraper
coming up
in the field, up and coming. It's crazy though. I mean, from the brow tine curl to the exact main beam to the G3 size, G2 length. The bladed.
The 2 is just so obvious.
Tight rack.
It's just a straight up rack. He's never going to get way outside the ears.
So Skyscraper was a breeder.
That's the exciting thing about this time of year, and we're going to be doing some more podcasts coming up and lots of good content. But it's time to shed hunt, or it's getting to be that time. We got a lot of snow on the ground. There's still a bunch of bucks that are carrying. But that's the next kind of exciting thing outside of habitat work and improvements is going to be shed hunting coming up and seeing who made it, who didn't, and really being able to pick up those sheds and put your hands on them and really analyze them, it makes it exciting for the future to be able to compare to previous deer and genetics and look forward to next fall already, what that chase is going to be. I mean, that's just almost as exciting as, the hunting itself is just, it's another piece to that puzzle. So lots of good shed hunting content coming up. Before we kind of dive into ATA and some other things, I promised a giveaway during this podcast. So we're going to be giving away a hat. It's Mike's favorite hat over there. Grab that hat.
Give away the Duke hat, they call it.
This hat is called the Duke. This is Mike's go-to hat here. So what we're going to do is if you're watching and listening to this podcast, we're going to do a keyword. So the keyword's going to be Duke. So if you send us a message on Facebook or Instagram with that keyword, again, it's going to be Duke. This is the Duke hat. Or send us an email on the Deer Society page or through the website, keyword Duke, and we'll put everybody in a drawing and draw a winner in the next week or so here, and send you a black Duke hat.
So what I love about this hat now, which is, I'm not, trendy like you cool guys. I'm the old man, but I just love it because, well, it's got kind of a ghosty black camo to it. And I just love that logo on the front, but on the back, us bald guys, we don't like too much netting on there. So that kind of protects our head in the sun, but yet it's nice and cool. And Yeah, this is my golf go-to hat for sure.
So send us an email, send us a message on social media, Duke, and we'll get you in a drawing and pull a winner for that hat. So moving on past that, ATA, you guys were at ATA here just in the last week or two. Some exciting things came from that. Talk to me about that whole experience, what you saw in the industry, how it went for, reception of all things, and let's just talk about ATA.
Yeah, so ATA, the Archery Trade Association show, every January falls the week before SHOT Show, which is the big guns and ammunition and hunting show as well. That one's in Vegas. This one was in Indianapolis, ATA show. And as always, it's a scramble to get there and get all the booths set up, shipping stuff, working on videos last minute, right down to the wire. Adam was a superhero and Brian was superhero. All the guys are superheroes. But, man, printing banners, brochures, just barely got out the door. But it was a good show. I think turnout was pretty good. Show size was a little bit smaller, overall footprint. I think a lot of brands are consolidating and becoming owned by some holding companies, you'd call them, or acquisition brands, whatever you want to say. But so instead of having individual, 10, 20 by 20 or 10 by 10 foot booths for each individual company, now you're seeing, big booths with up to 60 brands under one umbrella. So footprint of the show is a little bit smaller now, but I think attendance was a little bit better than last year with the COVID. So there was a year off of COVID, 2020. Last year was the first year back from COVID, and it was kind of slow, 2021. And then this year, it's actually 23. I look at it like the 2022 show, but it ended up being in January 2023 here. But I think turnout was a little bit better. Attendance was up, and we had some, great accounts. You just run into other manufacturers, buyers, the stores come in and you get to meet them and other partners. And it's just a good place to just meet everybody in the industry, keep those relationships going, and then also sell products like what we do on the Illusion side of things. So had some good meetings, launched a new category of products, which is going to be exciting.
Big. Going to be big, going to be huge.
And finally, the crates are back and we can get back to the daily grind here. So you can expand on that.
Yeah, ATA, I just, now you're getting into my lane, business, business. I just love the whole excitement behind everything all about that type of thing, from inventing a new product to, watching a business grow and develop, to see what's coming up, what has potential out there. Like JJ said, you're meeting with, big players in the industry with the buyers and all these different things and other manufacturers. And, my role has changed significantly with the business now. I'm more of kind of a talking head, if you will. And Chris is running the day-to-day operations and JJ's running all the marketing, and they're both collaborating on, developing new products. And to just watch all that, kind of, make its way to the next generation is just awesome to me. I mean, it's just fantastic. And the thing I really like about ATA is like all of a sudden people come into your booth out of nowhere. And they're just like, oh, blah, 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 blah. I use this thing, or what is that, or blah, blah, blah. Or a dealer will come in, man, I can't keep this stuff on the shelf. Just all the positive feedback that you get. And the interaction with people, whether they're fans or whatever. Like, I'm walking down with my coffee to get to the booth early in the morning, and you get burnt out at these shows, by the way. You're talking all day long. And so I'm walking down, all of a sudden this guy's, you're Mike Dukart, you're the Deer Society guy. And I go, yeah, that's me, how you doing? And here it was a shooter for one of the Morel. He was a Morel shooter with the targets anyway. And so he was a pro staff for him, and he goes, God, I watch your stuff all the time and this and that. Well, then I get to the booth, and here's Morel's right next to us, right? So now we're building this relationship with a whole new company that we never had any interaction with. And then I was talking to them, and I was talking to 10 Point, and we were talking about shooting the crossbow, and it's just like takes an act of God to pull the bolt out of the target, And he goes, "Oh, you got to check out our new." I'm trying to think of the name of it.
What's it
It's
called?
the
Kinetic 1.0.
the Kinetic 1.0. And so I didn't get down there, but a couple of the guys from the booth got down there, and they said you can pull out the bolt with like your pinky finger, and it's just stuff like that that is so cool. And so now, we're friends, we're buddies. They gave us a couple. They love our show and blah, blah, blah. And so, that's ATA to me, go out and have a great steak at night and visit with people and talk about the exciting things. And one real big exciting thing about ATA this year was our new product launch. And we've been working on this for years, okay? And it has to do with the habitat, the whitetails from scratch. It has to do with strategy. And what we've done is we've taken kind of that hunting strategy, that behavior that I've studied forever in this industry, and we've matched it up with nutrition, if you will, or food plots. We're calling them micro plots, okay? And so we've come up with this system and this strategy to actually kind of I don't want to use the word control behavior, but actually deer start to become social in certain areas. There's a whole strategy toward it. There's different types of foods that are in it. There's different types of soil. It's just so cool. And there's just so much information to it, well, once you see it out there, you'll really get excited about it, just like we did and like the buyers did. I mean, there's already big players saying, "Hey man, I want to end cap this. We've been waiting for this for years." And so to see that and to see the success of developing a new product and to see how the reception of that product is at this show was, that's what ATA is all about.
Yeah, for sure. Just quick on that product, and this may sound biased, but I've been privy to what's going on and been able to use it and test it. And I think the coolest part about it is there's so much research and technology, if you will, behind it. There's so many hours in testing and all the stuff behind the scenes that has proven this system out. But for the consumer, it makes it so simple. Like it takes all the guesswork out of this category and really makes it simple and effective for hunters out there, which is going to be really awesome. So look forward to that this spring. It's going to be really a game changer, I believe, in this industry. So that'll be really cool. I want to ask you, so aside from that product, on the Illusion side, what else was cool? Is there anything that really stood out to you guys at the show that was kind of cool or unique or coming out that you haven't seen before or that just stood out?
I didn't have a chance to really walk the show and look for new stuff from other people. Just busy, kind of wrapped up in our own booth, but on our end, we're coming out with a couple new products too. One on the deer calling side, we can get into a little bit more when that's closer to release. And then a couple pretty cool add-ons with the phase line too. So they're not ready yet. Can't really dive into the details, but that's what we have coming down the line with Illusion. We're also partnered up with Mountain Mics here moving forward and going to be doing a lot with those product lines, which is, the skull mounting systems and shed mounting things and turkey mounts. And they have a lot of cool products. So got to know those products a little bit more. And
I think that's like one of the coolest products in the world. I mean, JJ did a European mount on his own one time, and, there went my turkey fryer. But anyway, so he did it and I watched him, and I mean, the amount of work it takes to do that, if you're going to boil a skull, and then you got to pick out the brains on it, and then you got to be real careful not to get any kind of the bleach on the base. And it's just a lot of work. And then there's a membrane to deal with, and it's just so intense. And when I saw that product, I'm like, that is the coolest thing. Great idea. And then there was different ones that were dipped, and I'm kind of like, I'm not too sure about that. It seems a little off to me, a little gaudy. It doesn't seem too natural, whatever. But then when I got, the sheds for little splitter put on there, I did the American flag one and got it up on the wall next to a picture, and, with that barnwood flair to it. I mean, that is a great looking thing. and it's just really, really cool. That's a great product.
Yeah, and so when we're looking at the Payton rack sitting in front of us, we're probably going to do a project with him and Curly Fry. We talked to the neighbor to try to mount them and make them presentable, because all we really did was cap them. So we'll put them on a Skullmaster or a Record Keeper or one of the other products to display them and kind of tell that story a little bit too. And that's kind of cool when it's coming up to shed season here. You know, if you find a big set and you want to display them in a way where it really shows and showcases what that deer is, it just looks so much better on a skull or on a mount
Instead of
than
laying
just
on
laying
mantle
on the ground or
on
in a
the
pile.
ground, yeah.
So, yeah, some pretty cool options.
Yeah. And it actually looks cool on the wall. I mean, it's like decoration. The wife will even let you get away with it sometimes, I think.
There you go. Yeah, it's like that kind of whole modern feel, you know, even something real clean looking, a nice looking skull can really add some cool accenting to that. Before we wrap up here, kind of last questions and thoughts. Obviously, you guys are coming out with new products, so that's really exciting from the Illusion side of things this year. But what's to come for Deer Society? What should people look forward to, be looking for in 2023?
Yeah, before you get going here, I got to make a call out here because it just came to my brain. I'm in the
Coffee's
booth.
kicking in.
Yep, coffee's kicking in. So we're at ATA and I'm in the booth and some guy's kind of, standing off to the side because I was talking to somebody else and I could tell he was waiting to talk with me. So I go over there and I start having a conversation with him, and here he's a country music singer, and he's just like, dude, I listen to your podcast all the time. I'm on the road, blah, 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 blah. And I met him, and he tells me his name is Tate Stevens. Call out for Tate. Tate, if you're listening, buddy, thanks for stopping in the booth, man. We really appreciate you. And shoot a message to the guys, and they'll make sure that they take care of you. But I think he won like some big
X Factor.
X Factor, yeah. He won the X Factor, and he's out touring. And so then I was looking at his page after I met him. I started to kind of follow him, and here him and Michael Austin are good friends. Well, Michael Austin, in case you don't know, he sang a song called Deer Hunting Man. And we kind of got on board with that, helped promoted it, and we kind of use it in our platform and whatnot. So, yeah, big call out to Michael Austin and Tate Stevens. Hey.
Yeah, thanks for listening in for sure. So back to my question, what's to come? What's exciting for Deer Society?
A lot more video content, probably, especially with new product launches and new categories that we're going to dive into. It's going to be exciting. A lot more content. We're actually going to be moving locations here this spring, building a new studio, some offices, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, good stuff.
Film coming up, potentially. You could summarize or talk about that a little bit, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and really expanding on social media. I mean, really getting into it. We've been getting a lot of call and a lot of requests for, that younger generation, I'm going to call it, because I'm the old guy in the group. But there's a lot of young followers out there. And, we're trying to figure out more creative ways to reach them the way that they know how to communicate, that they've learned. And so we're going to really get into that and start sharing stuff that people are asking for, like quick little informational videos, more the vertical cell phone type video things, and just feed information, because there's just so much that we do, and there's so much to all the things that we do, from product development. Why do you develop that? What's the animal's behavior? What are you doing for land management? I mean, what are the strategy on hunting the deer? It's just so immense. I mean, just why did you put that trail camera right there? Why is that deer stand facing that way? Just these tiny little things that you just don't share because you take it for granted, and you can't, have a 2-hour video. We'll just do a bunch of these little snippets all the time. Maybe there'll be some entertainment in there too, and go that way.
Some more updates, more live little feeds, more education, short form. On all the platforms, from TikTok to even Instagram, Facebook, more YouTube shorts, just all across the board, more short content, not only with us, but with our other teams and things like that.
But that good stuff's not going anywhere, is it, Bri?
Not going anywhere. And I can tell you, here's the deal. If you guys are listening, and hopefully you're listening for a reason, and we always like to hear more from you guys, whether it's from what you want to hear on a podcast to what you'd like to see in video content, what you'd like to learn about. So always feel free to send messages through Deer Society, comment on YouTube, comment on Facebook, because that's the stuff we want to talk about. We do all this stuff, and not that we take it for granted, because we're always learning too, but we like to share those lessons with you. That's the reason we're doing it. Nobody here is doing a podcast or cranking out video just because we want to hear ourselves talk or we want to see ourselves on video. It's really just to share in the learning experiences that we've had and share them with you guys so that you can take them and hopefully be more successful in what you do. So we'd love to hear from you. So make sure, you have thoughts, questions, comments, ideas, for sure, throw them our way. If you're listening, make sure you subscribe to YouTube. If you're watching on there, all these podcasts, if you're listening, are on video on YouTube. And like I said, this year, going to be doing a lot more kind of show and tell, have some cool pieces to show you. If you want to get in on the hat, remember that keyword's Duke. So send us a message, Facebook, Instagram, wherever, with that keyword, we'll get you in on that drawing. Again, thanks for listening. If you haven't done so already, make sure you download the Deer Society app. It's free on the Google Play Store and the iTunes Store. So thanks for tuning in. Lots of good content coming. We're going to be doing some more podcasts here coming up on more habitat work and shed hunting. So we'll keep you posted, and good luck out there.
All our sponsors here at Deer Society are partners whose equipment we know we can trust are going to make you more successful and have a better experience in the field. Products like Illusion Systems, maker of the Black Rack, the Extinguisher, and the Phase Body Odor System. Tacticam, Reveal Cell Cameras, 10-Point Crossbows, Onyx Maps, Osseo Gear, Huiman, and Big Frig.